alarms flashing everywhere. Wait, hold the phone. Before this video titled gets started, we want to make a quick public service announcement to all of our viewers. We here at the Old Warlock have created our first ever supplement called the Deck of Contradiction. If you've watched some of our videos or been interacting with us, you may have heard mention of this before. Our Kickstarter for the Deck of Contradiction will be getting started on February 9th. February 9th, right down here, really big letters. We're very, very excited about this.
We are.
From all the interactions we've had with you guys, we think this is going to be a supplement that you all are going to like quite a bit as well. So please, all we're asking right now is that you go check out the Kickstarter page, the
pre-launch page.
The pre-launch page, just click the link below. Down in the description, go take a look. There's going to be a lot more of that coming soon. But again, the Kickstarter will actually be launching on February 9th. Before anything, that's all we've really got. And without further ado, here's the video. Bah! Did you ever watch Stranger Things?
I did.
Did you like it?
I did. I liked a couple of the seasons. A couple of the seasons I wasn't so great with. I did like the last season quite a bit.
That's interesting you bring that up. Because speaking of the last season, God, what was the name of the bad guy in that season? I can't.
Would it be
Vecna? That's right! Explosions! Vecna. We're going to be talking about Vecna today. Welcome back to the Old Warlock, where we are continuing with our mini-series playlist on YouTube thing where we're talking about
D&D Origins.
D&D Origins.
That's what we're calling. I think we're calling it D&D Origins.
D&D Origins. That sounds good.
Yeah,
Put it up at the bottom of the screen. D&D Origins. Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about, that's right, Vecna. Now,
hang on, though.
Fire away.
Hang on.
Fire away.
Let me interrupt.
Go ahead.
Because we're not just going to be talking about Vecna. We're going to be talking about... Vecna leads us to a segue into a man known as... His name was Jack Vance.
Jack Vance?
Jack Vance. Jack Vance is really... His name was used to create the name of Vecna. And we're going to get into the importance of Jack Vance on the origins of early D&D. But we're going to use Vecna to get there.
That we are. And before we do that, just as we do with most of these things, let's get this out of the way first. I have never encountered Vecna in any of my D&D adventures. Have you encountered Vecna in any of yours?
I have never encountered Vecna as a player, and I have never had Vecna in one of my campaigns because Vecna, to me, is really like super duper powerful.
Yeah. Even for him to say that, you know it's bad. Yeah,
and I like the character. I like who Vecna has become over the years. Vecna originally started out as just a hand and an eyeball.
Yeah.
But Vecna has developed... people have developed a story... Sorry. People have developed a backstory for Vecna over the years, which is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't agree with a lot of it because it doesn't fit with my early encounters with reading about Vecna, but that's okay.
That's all right.
But yeah, Vecna. Should we show where Vecna... Let's start by just talking about the original Vecna. Not Vecna as a character, but the hand of Vecna and the eye of Vecna.
So, for those of you, I actually don't know what order these are going to come out in, so why don't you start us off by looking at the hand and eye of Vecna from... Wait for it. Eldritch Wizardry.
Our good friend Eldritch Wizardry, which has just no end of cool stuff in it. I mean, if you ever get the chance, pick up a copy of Eldritch Wizardry. If you want to find the origins of a lot of things that are still in use in D&D today.
The big artifact, especially.
This is what you need to go with.
Not sponsored.
Don't worry. He really wants us to have a sponsor. We went through this a couple years ago. A lot of you guys, we were letting you sponsor videos for free.
Polar Seltzer keeps me energized and ready to talk in the Old Warlock. Sorry.
Anyway... So let's go to Eldritch Wizardry, which came out in 1976. Eldritch Wizardry was a supplement for original Dungeons & Dragons. But let's go and let's read. How about I read one, you read one?
Go for it.
So let's start with the Hand of Vecna and the Eye of Vecna. Keep in mind, Vecna is not a fully fleshed out character. See what I did there? Vecna fleshed out. Because Vecna's a lich. So,
this guy.
Anyway.
It's always a hoot.
So, the Hand of Vecna. The Hand of Vecna, this again, Eldritch Wizardry, 1976. The hand of Vecna appears to be a dried, shriveled, and blackened hand, such as would have been caused by having been burned. The hand, and it is also rumored in dark passageways, an eye, is the sole remains of an ancient lich who was so powerful that he was able to imbue his hand with wondrous, horrible powers, and to enable it to survive even after his long undead body had ceased to exist. If the hand is pressed against the stump of an arm, the wearer is able to use its various powers, although he must determine them by trial and error, which I think is really interesting. Mm-hmm. The hand causes the user to become totally evil, but even a detect evil spell will not reveal this.
I like that. That's really cool.
The hand causes the user... I've already read that sentence. Let's move on to the next one. Once the hand is pressed to the stump of an arm, it affixes itself to the arm and can only be removed under certain conditions. Until one of the primary powers, listed below, is used, the hand may be removed at will. Of course, the user is still minus his normal hand. With each use of a primary power, the chance of removing the hand is reduced from 100% by 10%. After 10 uses, the hand can never be removed. Secondary powers may be used as often as desired without the drastic effects of use of primary powers. Each time a primary power is used successfully, the user is subject to one of the penalties listed in Table 3 of the Artifacts and Relics tables. None of the effects of the hand may be altered in any way. Even wishes or acts of the gods are useless in this regard. So this is not something you just tinker with on a weekend. You know, this is a major thing. The secondary powers include one from Table 4 and 4 from Table 1. So you get to, in this, you get to go and we would roll dice. And you would have a random number of different powers from other tables in here so that your hand of Vecna was different from your best friend's hand of Vecna in their campaign. The primary powers are used by extending the fingers of the hand in different combinations. Use about 16 combinations, i.e. clenched fist, index finger extended, all fingers extended, etc. And have about 6 that don't do anything. So anyway, it's just something that you would write up and you would give to the player, and you would say you have to do this in order to make power whatever work. And woe betide the player who forgot what those symbols were and did the wrong thing. Anyway, that is the Hand of Vecna. And it has a reminder here. Once again, nothing may alter the effect of the hand on the user. Then let's look at the Eye of Vecna. You want to read that?
I would love to. The Eye of Vecna. Right after the Hand of Vecna. Same page. It is also said...
Sorry if you just blew out your ears there.
But not in the hearing of strangers, that when the mighty lich Vecna finally met his doom, that one of his eyes survived along with his hand. The eye may or may not have originally belonged to Vecna, as it is said to glitter much in the same manner as the eye of a feline. If the eye is pressed in the empty socket of a human's head, it grafts itself to the head of the user and gives him remarkable powers.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Once placed, the eye cannot be removed, and it turns the user unalterably chaotic. The eye has 3 secondary powers from Table 1 and 1 from Table 2, which can be used with no adverse effect on the user. However, the eye has 1 primary power from Table 5, which, when used, causes the user to suffer the effects of one of the powers from Table 3. So, long story short, it's got a lot of different powers, but one power that, when it's used, affects the player in some capacity.
Right.
The effects of the eye on the user may not be altered in any manner, even by wishes. Again, same kind of thing. Very, very powerful, and it's going to be tough to get rid of, so you got to think about it before you use it. I think these are pretty darn cool magical items.
I really do. And again, they first appeared in 1976, and I believe that those two things, the Hand and the Eye of Vecna, were created by a man named Brian Bloom. And Brian Bloom was he wasn't the co-founder of TSR. He was basically one of the initial investors. And without Brian Bloom, they might not have gotten anything published, because originally it was Don Kay and Gary Gygax. They each put up $1,000 in TSR to get things rolling and published. They didn't have enough money. Brian Bloom stepped in and gave $2,000, and that was what allowed Dungeons and Dragons to be published. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of history after that with the Bloom and with Mr. Bloom and relatives of his that it's quite a story that has been covered all over the internet. If you're interested, go ahead and take a look. But Brian Bloom, it is believed, was the person who wrote up Vecna, the Hand of Vecna and the Eye of Vecna. Mm-hmm. Now, it's also mentioned in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons DM's Guide in 1979. I don't know that we need to actually read that one unless you're inclined, but it's kind of the same thing, just a little more fleshed out. I keep using the same one. I apologize. But the question that that's the origin of Vecna,
yes,
the hand and the eye of Vecna, which is throughout Dungeons and Dragons, and it's a major thing today.
Synonymous with
It really is. Mm-hmm. I believe that it is. But to me, one of the interesting part is where did not the idea of Vecna, but where did the name Vecna come from? Mm-hmm. Because what it is, Vecna is an anagram for the name Vance, V-A-N-C-E. Now, back in the day, there's an author by the name of Jack Vance, and he wrote no end of science fiction and fantasy books. He had a very popular series, which I haven't read for a couple of decades. I need to read them again. It was called The Dying Earth. And Jack Vance was really, really popular with Gary Gygax and co. Vance started to write in the 1950s. His Dying Earth series, there are only 4 books in it, but he started in the 1950s. He didn't finish until the 1980s.
Oh, wow.
But
I didn't know that.
The thing is, Gary Gygax loved the Jack Vance books. Anything that Jack Vance wrote, Gary Gygax took a shine to. And he mentions Jack Vance an awful lot. Now, you old schoolers out there have probably heard the term Vancian magic. The reason you've heard of that is because Gary Gygax essentially lifted the magic system from the Dying Earth novels and dropped them straight into Dungeons and Dragons. In Vancian magic, in the Dying Earth books, there are very few wizards that can actually master spells. They can only do a few spells at a time because there's a difficulty working with words of power, because those words of power are strong enough to alter reality. So what happens is it's really difficult to learn spells. You have these big books that you have to haul around with you. You learn the spells, and once you speak them, the power goes out with the words, and they're lost from your memory, and you have to go and memorize the spells again.
Sound familiar?
Does this sound familiar to those of you from Dungeons & Dragons early days?
Comment down below if it does.
So, anyway, and I just want to read it. I just want to read
Yes.
it. Yes. Yes, uh-huh. Yeah.
I hope there's like 40 comments.
And the thing is, we often get things like that from you guys because very, very often you do that just to show us, be careful what you ask for, guys. But we appreciate it anyway. It makes us laugh. I wanted to read one thing here that this is a quote from Gary Gygax about Jack Vance. Aside from ideas and specific things, the very manner in which Jack Vance portrays a fantasy environment, the interaction of characters with that environment and with each other is so captivating that wherever I could manage it, I attempted to include the feel he brings to his fantasy tales into the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons game. So, and there are a lot of other things about Jack Vance. I'm thinking we might even end up doing
a whole video.
Possibly 2.
Oh, okay.
Because there is an influence on thieves, the concept of thieves in Dungeons and Dragons via Jack Vance. Just a really interesting connection there between the early creators of Dungeons and Dragons and how they were lifting things, and they acknowledged it. It wasn't like they were doing it without giving credit. They were lifting things out of some of these early novels and dropping them straight into Dungeons & Dragons, and I really think that's cool. Now, in D&D, going back to Vecna, but again, the reason it's Vecna is because it's an anagram of the word Vance, of the name Vance. Getting back to Vecna, Vecna started to get a backstory in Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition. The origin story of Vecna has a couple of different pathways that it's followed over the years. It's kind of a pick whichever one you like the most. It's involved, and some of them involve Sararak, which you guys may have heard of, and we might end up talking a little bit about that at some point in the future. But the main point of this video is that Vecna goes way back to 1976, and it's named after a man named Jack Vance, who had a huge impact on early Dungeons & Dragons, especially in the realm of magic use.
I really like a lot of the stuff that comes from Vecna. I like being able to kind of see this progression through time, because I think this really is one of the earliest ways in which there was a development of an official lore with Dungeons and Dragons. Now, if you've watched the videos for a while with us, you know that we have very mixed feelings about the creation of an official lore that everyone has to abide by.
Right.
But I do like that the fact that there are some consistent through lines through all of the editions, because there are some similarities between them. Whether or not you like different ones, that doesn't really matter.
Right.
But there are some things like Vecna that have persisted over the course of, by this point, 50 years. That's a while. These things have been kicking around.
Right. And to me, that's fascinating just from the standpoint of history.
Yeah.
It's one thing to find it interesting because of D&D. It's another thing to find it interesting just because it's almost like a folktale that continues on, and it's through a game, which to me is really cool.
And that even now, I know I was joking about Stranger Things in the beginning, but the fact that there is this very significant impact culturally of like the most popular show of the past decade that now has one of its main bad guys being something that was come up with by these individuals back in the 1970s. The impacts of these things are very, very big. And for those of you who may have seen the search term of Vecna and come who's never seen us before and are a 5th edition person or something like that, this is something that's still very, very important today, especially if you watch Critical Role, which is not something that we necessarily do. If you remember, I don't remember which campaign of theirs it was. I think it was the second campaign. Quote me if you're wrong, but
we're probably wrong.
The Hand of Vecna played a very important role towards the end of one of those campaigns when, God, what's the guy's name? The big actor guy who plays D&D?
Joe Manganiello.
Joe Manganiello. I think it was Joe Manganiello whose character cut his hand off and put the Hand of Vecna on and used that as a way to kind of be a traitor to the rest of the members of his party. So these things are very important even today, and I think that's cool.
And again, him doing that here in the 2000s, and the origin of this goes clear back to 1976, and it's related to a man who had an impact on the early creation of D&D. To me, those threads are great.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. So, thanks, guys.
Couple things. Thank you very much to our Patreon subscribers without whom we would not be able to do a lot of the things that we are doing. If you'd like to become a Patreon member with us, please check the links down below in the description or above or in the description.
Yes, you'll get extra videos. You'll get longer podcasts. When we do podcasts, you'll also get early access to some of the supplements and things that we're working on here within the Old Warlock at the Old Warlock Games. So if you're interested in joining, go take a look at that down below. But if not, no worries.
And we also have, just so you know, starting on February 9th, we have a Kickstarter campaign starting for something that we have designed and developed called the Deck of Contradiction.
Yes.
It's very similar to the Deck of Many Things, but it's not very similar. It's similar to, but very different.
Yes.
And it comes with a lot of lore straight out of my campaign of 45 years. Go check it out, please. The link to the pre-launch page is in the description. Go to that and sign up for a launch notification if you're interested.
Yep.
And we will have samples and things available once the campaign goes live, we'll have samples you can go take a look at to see if it's something that you might want to be a part of.
Absolutely.
But that's exciting for us. February 9th, Kickstarter campaign for the Deck of Contradiction.
Keep your eyes peeled.
I am Jim.
I'm Alex.
Keep your sword arm free.
Bye, guys.